Hello, Garland Nixon here. And, we talk about various and sundry conflicts that the U.S. empire is involved in around the world. And it comes down to this: are there multiple conflicts or is there only one? Rhetorically speaking, you can put it both ways. Let's talk. Good morning, all. How are you? It's Monday morning. And I hope you watched my recent video. I did a video about the arrest of Pavel Durov, the owner of Telegram. That's one worth watching. I think there's I mean, clearly we know what's going down now. They're going to go after the social media um owners, the platforms that they don't like, and they're going to take them. If they won't do what they want on the platforms, they're going to just arrest them, and I would argue either shut down or seize the platforms. All right, and which is part of all of this. So let's talk about this. The particular two conflicts that are going on with the U.S. empire, one in Ukraine, one in Israel. So let's talk about, for starters, is it is this one conflict or is it two, right? Here's what's interesting. If we start by doing kind of comparison, right, of the two conflicts, uh, both are ethnical, what's the word I'm looking for? Both groups, whether it's the Israeli government or the Kiev regime, shall we say, are ethnocentric themed entities of power, right? Ethnocentric, right? They are, our ethnicity, whatever term you want to use, is superior to our adversary, enemy, whatever you want, that has to be vanquished. In the event of Israel, clearly it is not just Jewish people, no, Zionist in particular. Zionism is I would argue, a political manifestation of assertive and aggressive, militaristic minded people who want to rule the world. That's what Zionism is, right? And conveniently, they use the Jewish faith so that they can use Jewish people as human shields for their nefarious plan around the world. One of the good things that we're seeing amongst all the horrible things is that a lot of Jewish people, A, are coming to this realization that they're being used, and B, are standing up to fight back. And I think that's good. That's very, very positive, because if that weren't the case, I think there were there are people out here who would like just blame Jewish people in general, and there could be violence against, random Jewish people for no reason whatsoever, other than because of their particular ethnicity, religion, whatever you want to call it. And certainly that's something that we do not ever want to see happen. So Zionism is being exposed as an ethnocentric ideology that is a cat's paw for the ruling elite in the West, who want to go around the world and steal everybody's stuff. And in particular, they want to control the oil-rich region of the world, that is the Middle East, West Asia, whatever you want to call it. In addition to that, it's part of the U.S. Worldwide containment strategy, also known as the Wolfowitz Doctrine. Look that up, where the U.S. says no country will be able to rise to power anywhere in the world in a manner or to a degree that could challenge U.S. hegemony in any particular region, not just worldwide, but in any particular region. Clearly, Iran has risen to that point. Again, the U.S. imperialists, they're always a day late and a dollar short. We're going to stop this from happening. Yeah, too late, pal. So the conflict in the Middle East using Zionism has, I could call it twin, dual purpose, but it's all one purpose. And that is, number one, to control the oil-rich region of the world. Number two, to stop Iran to thwart Iran's rise to regional prominence. And too late. And not only that, Iran has not just risen to regional prominence in that they've been of great assistance technologically. They're really, see, what people don't really understand about Iran is a lot of brilliant scientists there, and they are quickly rising as a technological slash military. Let's say we call this a military technical power, right? To a point where the U.S. can't contain them anymore, and with using Israel or even themselves, they can't contain them. And what Iran has done is built a what's called the active axis of resistance, but it is a defensive slash offensive military union in the region, and they can use that to hold off the U.S., et cetera. So it's Zionism, control the oil in the region, and to effect and enact the Wolfowitz doctrine to keep Iran from rising to power, which is too late. And let's not forget, there are various countries in the region where the leaders of the country are highly compromised to the U.S. empire, and probably in some instances are very concerned, more so that they be killed by their masters at the U.S. empire, even so more so than pushing than the people in their own country. I mean, the people in these countries around the Gulf countries, etc. They clearly overwhelmingly support the effort to resist the efforts of the Palestinians to resist Zionism. And the leaders aren't acting in concert with what the people want. So clearly, the leaders are so highly compromised in many of these countries that they're more afraid of the U.S. empire than they are their own people, right? But the gap between the fear that they have for those two is rapidly closing. The other thing I think that is important to understand about that dynamic is that these people are looking forward, and they understand that the world is shifting, and that it's shifting to the east, it's shifting to the global south, and the days when the U.S. has this kind of power are numbered. So we've got that's the dynamic in the Middle East. Let's go to and again, ethnocentrism, ethno-nationalism, and all and even with the Zionists, it's even really not a nationalism anymore. Yes, they claim Israel, but it's kind of a worldwide ideology. It's like we represent Jews all over the world. They want to be the single voice for Jewish people worldwide. And the problem is Jewish people worldwide ain't down with that. So they're trying to be the single voice for Jewish people worldwide, and to oppress and to genocide the Muslims in the region that won't go along with their evil and diabolical machinations. Take us over to Ukraine, and what do we have? Ethnocentrism, right? And are the Ukrainian extremists far right? Are they, the Azov battalion and right sector and blah, blah, blah? Are they, in fact, ethno-nationalists? No. In the same way that the Zionists say that they want to control, be the voice and control for Jews worldwide, they've clearly said in Ukraine, the extremists in Ukraine have clearly said, look, we want to be, as they've said, control the white race, lead the white race worldwide. But there's a lot of people in the white race that don't want to be led by, a bunch of clowns from Ukraine. Okay, so you've got the same dynamic there. What else do you have that's a very similar dynamic? In Europe, you've got a lot of puppet leaders, just like in, and if they're not completely puppets, they're so highly compromised by the U.S. empire that they're in no position to push back. And so one of the things that the U.S. has to worry about or be concerned about in both the Middle East and in Europe is this: because their comprador leaders in those regions are not acting in the interest or of their population, or even in alignment with the current concerns and needs of their populations, the U.S. has to be meddle a lot in those countries to tamp down opposition. So the U.S. is in a fight in both regions. Both regions, they've got a power there that's out of control, be it Russia or Iran, that they can't control. They've got a cat's paw that is extremist ethno-nationalists, right? Both Ukraine, Israel. They have a bunch of, as I said, a bunch of leaders that they have to try to manage. You got to manage these people who are working for you, but against the needs of their people. And that's getting more and more difficult. And you're too late in both areas. Russia is too powerful now, far too powerful for the U.S. empire to contain. These containment strategies, right? And as is Iran, they're too powerful for the U.S. to contain. The only thing the U.S. can do in both of those instances, if it gets desperate, is swallow a suicide pill, right? That's all. It's the only option. Is to swallow a suicide pill. Is to look at it. Is to become a suicide bomber. What are they going to do with Iran? If they go all out with Iran, best case scenario, the best possible case scenario for the U.S. empire is our economy collapses. Because the bottom line is, if they go to war with Iran, there would be significant disruptions, if not total and complete disruptions, depending on how far the war goes. Even if the war don't go far, if there is a war in the Middle East, there will be significant disruptions to oil. And don't you think for one second that Iran isn't going to do to the Straits of Hormuz the exact same thing that the Yemen, Ansar Allah, is doing in the Red Sea. Let's do this. Let's just look, for those of you who don't often do this. Let's take a look. A lot of people don't do this. It'll take a minute for it to pop up and, kind of get an idea what we're looking at here, right? Let me do that. All right, let's take a look at that. And I'm going to make my point real quick about, okay, what would happen. Let us take a peek. Okay, we're looking at the Straits of Hormuz. Now, okay, so here's what you got. You got the Persian Gulf right here. You got the Straits of Hormuz, right? And Iran, this is big old Iran here. Iran is controlling the Straits of Hormuz, right? So what happens if this is the Red Sea? What happens if Iran closes off the Straits of Hormuz? United Arab Emirates, they got a lot of oil. That ain't going nowhere. Qatar has a lot of oil and gas. That ain't going nowhere. Bahrain, that ain't going nowhere. Ooh. Kuwait, a lot of oil and gas. That ain't going nowhere, right? Saudi Arabia, a lot of their oil and gas goes out of that ain't going nowhere. 30% of the world's oil stopped. Boom. Ain't getting right here. It ain't going nowhere. You got islands. You see that big island there, Iranian island, loaded to the gills all around here. You got that area is loaded to the gills with anti-ship missiles, etc. So guess what? Bad news, U.S. economy, it's done. Let's go here. They also control on the other side. And look, this is Saudi Arabia in the middle, right? Saudi Arabia right here in the middle. On one side, they got the Straits of Hormuz controlled by Iran. On the other side, there's little old Yemen. And what's it closing? This is called the Bab al-Mandab Strait. See, Bab al-Mandab Strait. Okay, so they closed that off. How's Saudi Arabia getting anything anywhere? But most of their stuff goes to the Straits of Hormuz anyway. Okay, so now these two of the most important waterways, and might I add, see the Red Sea there? If you look at really what the Red Sea goes through here, this is where stuff comes out of the Suez Canal, right? So that way, if we look bigger, we got all this stuff coming out of China, coming all Vietnam, and you name it, right? All of these things that are made over in this area. What happens to them? They traverse around, and they go through the Red Sea and they come up and they end up in the Mediterranean for Europe, right? Well, guess what? Things go bad there and those things get shut down. Europe's done. And I mean, just the disruption to the world economy is irreversible. So the U.S. has option A there, and option A is go to war with Iran and wipe out their own economy. Just wipe it out. Now, not only that, let's just say, let me ask you this: we got an election coming up. What do you think would happen, electorally speaking? How do you think it would affect the polls? Right? If I don't know, September 15th, October 1st, people woke up one day and said, "Holy crap, what's going on? I just went by the gas station and it said $28 a gallon when it reopens because the gas station sign says we don't have any gas and we don't know when we will." I've seen that. I've been in countries where I've seen that before because of U.S. sanctions, where all the gas stations are just closed, where you got a bunch of people riding around on a pickup truck, where they got to put 30 people on as many people as they can on a pickup truck because they can only get gas, and to move around, you got to do it any way you can, right? How do you think that affect the election? Game, set, and match. The Democrats would lose everywhere by a million votes. It would be like unanimous losses for them. So in the event that that war gets started, yeah, you can, that's going to be bad news. And that's the good part. We'd be lucky if it doesn't go nuclear and we don't all die. But my point being this: the U.S. is in a position there where there's no win for them. They can't defeat the resistance. The resistance can fight a long, long, long time. I would say this right now: the issue in the Middle East is this: the resistance is spread out, hard to find, both sticking and moving, and they can fight a long time. How long can Israel continue to have no economy, to have all of their generations of young people in the military fighting, getting bombed, blown up, attacked by Hezbollah, shooting it out, getting wounded, and they have a limited pool of people? Israel's not that big, so how long can they keep war? Losing all of their stuff, getting their tanks blown up. How long can they continue going back and forth doing this? Number one. And Ukraine. How long can they continue? The Russians can do, as we can see, the Russians can do this. This is what they do. The Russians can go on and fight, fight, fight. The Ukraine, which is, of course, a cat's paw for the U.S., is in a situation where they're running out of people. They're running out of equipment, and we're filling both of their coffers with equipment and people. How about this? Ukraine has no economy. The United States pays the salaries of everyone in Ukraine who works for the government. The U.S., we pay the pensions, the retirement. They talk about, hey, Social Security may be be insolvent. Well, it ain't gonna be insolvent in Ukraine. They ain't got to worry about it. They don't have to have Social Security. They don't have to have bonds. They don't have to do anything. Every month, the people in Ukraine get their pension checks, and the United States is writing them. They got no economy. It's been destroyed. You can't have and they're a big part of that, obviously and clearly, is the issue with their electrical system. With their power grid is in deep and serious trouble due to attacks. And so, how do you have any industry that takes a lot of power when you can barely keep the lights on for every ma and pa in Ukraine? So we're paying everything. How about Israel? They got no economy. It's shot. It's done. The Yemen, Ansar Allah, has closed down the port of Eliat, and so that's bankrupt and dead. Their economy's done, and who knows how it'll ever come out of it? Because let's face it, after this is over, who's going to buy anything made in Israel? If it's made in Israel, you're going to have to change it to made somewhere else. You're going to have to lie, because BDS will be what they were concerned about, boycott, divestment, and sanction. Well, it'll be a way of life for a lot of people. It won't even be you won't need a website. If people find out that a company is doing business in Israel, they're going to have trouble not getting boycotted, and things of that nature. We're already seeing Starbucks and other companies start to suffer. We're seeing people start to realize that something very important. This is important. That is, now that corporations are controlling the government, there ain't no point in protesting the government. They're advertised for power. If you want to go after the people with power, you got to go after the corporations. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, it's only logical. If the corporations control the government, which they do, the only way to seek redress for your grievances is you got to go to the corporations, but you can't talk with them. That's why they hide behind their government puppets. So the only way to address that is to hit them where it hurts, and that is to stop buying their stuff. And I think that's one of the positive things that's coming out of this, is that people are realizing, maybe intuitively, maybe not on the surface, they maybe aren't thinking about the reality that the government's control, the corporations control the government. So you have to go after the corporations. But I think intuitively they're looking and they're starting to realize that's somebody we can go after, because that's a part of it. We can't go, no point in going after the government. They don't listen to you. They don't care less what you say. They don't work for us. So if you're going to go after, at least you got to punch somebody, and it's corporations, right? But we've got such identical dynamics in both ethnocentric governments, both of them, a bunch of puppet regimes in the region that are acting against the interest of their population. And the U.S. is trying to manage the enmity. They're trying to manage the tension. Think about this. What the U.S. is trying to do is manage the tension between its puppet leaders and its population that the puppet leaders aren't representing. Both the same exact thing, both places, and trying to close the barn door after the horse is already out, or the cow, the horse, and the bull, and all of them have already gone at the barn door, and you're trying to close the door now. You're trying to stop Russia's ascension when it's already got far too powerful. You're trying to stop Iran's ascension when it's already gotten far too powerful. Same exact dynamic. And now you're hung up in a two conflicts, whatever you want to call it, that the people at home are getting weary of. Now there's a third tension that they have to manage, right? They got to manage the tension between their compromised leaders in the Middle East and their people who are restive, who are upset and angry because they support the Palestinians. They have to maintain the tension between a German leader, Schultz, and the people of Germany, who are starting to louder and louder ask, why the hell who blew up our pipelines and why, right? And they got to make up stories for that. The Brits, whose economy is completely in the sewage, and the people of England are starting to freak out, run out in the streets, and the place is going to pieces. And of course, back home, where people are like, hey, for God's sake, what's going on here? We want some money spent on us. Why in the world? But the U.S. is like the perfect example. They're building 17 bases in Finland. Oh, great. We got Finland right on Russia's border. Got to build 17 new bases. How much do you think that costs? And how do you think people at home are looking around saying, I can't afford this and that? You're building bases everywhere, and we can't eat. So you've got the same tensions are growing. That's what happens to an empire, between the compromised people in Europe, the compromised leaders in both Europe and the Middle East, and their populations, and at home. And that is the Democratic Party, which is at this point, the leadership of the Democratic Party, and for the most part, the leadership of the Republican Party, let's be honest, are working for the ruling elite, working for the corporations, working for the military industrial complex. But in the Republican Party, there's somewhat of a revolt going on. There is an element in the Republican Party. There is no elements in the Democratic Party. And that's not, now, I'm not saying I'm for or against either of these parties. People who know me know that I am an independent. So I'm not, this party or that party. But my point is, there is an element in the Republican Party who's kind of had it with that crap, and who's starting to be pushed back. And that element supports Donald Trump. And I don't know how things are going to work out. I'm not saying they're good, bad, or indifferent. That element also has some nasty elements to it. But my point being, they don't at all. They don't have a real clear understanding of foreign policy because, particularly when it comes to immigration, they cannot see, or maybe they will not see, that the immigration problem in the US and in Europe are all a result of the US and European foreign policy, that we destabilize these countries and their damn people show up at our borders. So they only see they show up at our borders. They don't see we destabilize them. So they've got some learning to do. But bottom line is this: there's an element in there that is pushing back against you at neoconservatism. There's not even that in the Democratic Party. Now, yeah, don't get me wrong. Their can I shall I say their answers, their plans to fix it, got a few flaws in them. But there is an element, as opposed to no elements in the Democratic Party, that are saying, hey, perhaps we should reconsider this neocon foreign policy, right? Now, let me add this. I want to show you something. Let's look at the Democrats' neocon platform real quick. Let's look at this. Okay. Now, let's look at some things. This is the 2024 platform, and let's read a couple things. The threat posed by Russia transcends its war of aggression in Ukraine. Russia is enlisting North Korea, Iran, and China in its efforts to attack freedom across the world through military equipment sales and economic partnerships, right? That tells you that number one, military equipment sales, that means the military industrial complex got a very good hold on the Democratic Party. This is the Democratic Party's platform for 2024. And strength, military equipment sales and economic partnerships, that's BRICS. That means the Democratic Party, by their own platform, has a war on BRICS. Let's continue. And they keep saying this, things like this. President Biden will continue to work closely with the EU on emerging political and economic challenges and work with our European and Indo-Pacific allies to disrupt Russia's emerging military and economic alliances with, and you notice they keep saying military and economic alliances with Iran and North Korea. It's always Russian. It's always Russia, Iran, North Korea, right? Let's see. Here's North Korea. Aware of exacerbated nuclear proliferation challenges that the world is facing as Russia, the People's Republic of China, and North Korea expand and diversify their nuclear arsenals, and in the context of Iran continuing. And now, why do I say bring all that? Because if you look at the Democratic platform, which is now the Democratic Party's platform, which is now nothing but the platform of the neocons, they don't separate them. They put them together over and over and over. What they're actually telling you is this: that their war is on Russia and China and the when they say North Korea, PRC, People's Republic of China, and all they're saying Asia. That is their containment strategy. What we're looking at with Russia, what we're looking at with China is the containment a worldwide Russia, China, Iran, right, which is Israel, a worldwide containment strategy. And let me, if I may, this is something I think you should possibly see if I can ever get to it here. Let me find it. Uh, Play it myself, but I'm going to show you something that I would highly recommend that you watch, and that is this. Professor Nikolai Petro, who's a brilliant guy, I watched him, and he's got neo-containment is a catastrophe catastrophe for the USA. It's a neutrality study, something I really discovered the guy right here. It's really, really good. I like that website, but neo-containment is a catastrophe for the US. That's what they're talking about. What we're talking about. And when I say, is it one war or two? It is if you ask, okay, what's happening with Taiwan, what's happening with the Philippines, what's going on with Myanmar, whatever the hell, right? All of these countries, is this one war or two wars in Ukraine or whatever? When you start looking at them, I mean, Taiwan, It's on it's on China's border. In fact, we recognize it as part of China, and the U.S. is saying we've got to defend Taiwan from China. Well, no, Taiwan's part of China. We got to defend Ukraine from Russia. Now we're starting to overthrow countries around India. We want to put bookend countries on either side of India so that we can disrupt India. Before you know it, trust me, they're going to wake up one day in New Delhi and they're going to see marches going on and protests of dissidents, that are, and the U.S. Embassy will be like, on their website will have like what time to be there and who's going to be there. The U.S. ambassador will be holding a flag, down with Modi, up with, whatever puppet they have. It's one strategy. So I guess when I name this Israel and Ukraine, one war or two, what I'm really getting at is this. What we're viewing is the U.S. containment strategy. We're going to rule the world. It's a really sick strategy if you think about it. And one of the things we have to do is this. We need Slavs to fight Slavs, right? We need Middle Easterners to fight Middle Easterners, right? They want to get Saudi Arabia and all, they want Muslims to kill other Muslims. But until such time as they can hopefully, in their eyes, get that, they'll use the Zionists to fight Muslims, and hopefully they can enlist the aid of some of the Muslim leaders. They want Slavs in Ukraine to fight the Russian Slavic people. They want Asians and Chinese people in Taiwan to fight Chinese people in they also want Japanese and Korean, all of them to join in to fight China on behalf of the U.S., right? And of course, the time's going to come. Come on, India is deaf, dumb, and blind if they can't see that the time's going to come when the U.S. is going to say, Kashmir region, they need to be free. They need independence. The U.S. stands with Kashmir. You know what? We need to pump arms in there so they can defend themselves with India. Modi's a fool if he doesn't see that coming. It is guaranteed to happen, right? They will find the strategically important countries on the border of very powerful nations, of up and rising nations, and they will go in there and try to utilize those nations or those regions to destabilize the country that they target, and that's coming. So what we're looking at really is and here's the other part of it. Think about this. The fact that this is one worldwide containment strategy makes it extremely brittle and makes it very, very difficult to win, or almost guaranteed to lose, for this reason. If you're trying to control the world, you can't afford to lose anywhere. People say the U.S. can't afford to lose. No way in the world. They'll be desperate. They can't afford to lose in Israel, right? Can they afford to lose in Ukraine? See, here's the problem. If you're trying to rule the world, any particular region that you lose, any one region that you lose means you don't rule the world. So in a way, one loss means a big, you lose one, you lose all. You can't say, I'm going to control the world, all except for Latin America. I'm going to completely control the world, all except for the Middle East, where all the oil comes out, all except for the Eurasian No. It's part of all of it. So that brings us to something, and that is Ukraine conflict. I mean, we can discuss all of them at the same time, but think about this. Right now, the way I'm looking at it, I would bet, if I had to, based on the polling, based on a lot of things, I think Trump win. I would bet on Trump to win. If the election's on the up and up, I would bet on Trump to win. Based on the 7 battleground states, particularly some other things, but the fact that now RFK Jr. has joined forces with Trump, I think, is going to seal the deal, really, because Trump, was in the margin of error in Michigan and Wisconsin, these other places, and RFK Jr. gives them a few more percentage, and I think that'll be enough. And I think, we don't know. There's a long time between then and now, but there are a number of things that can happen if the ante gets upped in the Middle East war in a way that disrupts the oil supply, it's Trump wins in a blowout and probably ends with, a super majority in both houses at that point. That's potential. If you paying 15, 20, $25 a gallon, if our economy is collapsing a la 2008 or worse as a result of a major disruption, then you can forget anything even looking like a Democratic Party existed. You'll need a museum to find a Democrat. But a time machine, but though in Congress. But of course, that ain't to say what kind of evil things they may say. Well, I guess we can't have an election because there's a war going on, and who knows? I don't know, but I can't predict that. I can just say, man, you let gas go to $25 a gallon and our economy collapse. Yeah, this thing would be over, right? So my prediction, based on the battleground states, is that Trump wins now. But they can't let Trump win because Trump and Vance particularly seem determined to end the Ukraine conflict. Whether they can or not, I don't know. But let me tell you something. If they seem determined to stop sending money, and if they stop sending money, if they formally we're backing out, how does the U.S. military continue targeting and all these other things they're doing in the Black Sea? And well, how do they continue? It's over. This thing's over. And Ukraine has to sit down with Russia, and Russia's going to dictate an end. But bottom line is, whatever happens, if they don't have the support of the U.S. leadership, they can't continue. Now, here's my point there. But if, as I argue, if in fact all this is one war, and the U.S. plan was we're going to take Russia out first, which will make it easier to go after China. Well, that wasn't that great a strategy and perhaps in hindsight, they should have called the ghost of Napoleon and Hitler to get some advice on that, but they didn't. Okay. And they decided we're going to take out Russia. Yeah, people have made that plan before, and it ain't never worked out real well. The Russians do not cooperate. As they say, they do not comply, right? So the U.S. says, we're going to take Russia and China out. And it's like, yeah, we'll see about that. Okay. And but what happens? Trump and Biden come in. I mean, Trump and Vance come in. What happens if they say, hey, we ain't sending you nothing, and let's see what happens. Let's see you continue to fight Russia without us. What is Europe going to do? Let me add this. If the U.S. backs out of that, then Europe would have to, as they're broke and their people are enraged and the people are running through the streets of the UK, wielding blunt objects to beat up, hapless immigrants. I mean, it has devolved into they'll be eating themselves next into a zombie apocalypse in Wolverham or whatever the hell names like that. They Leeds and places like that in England. So as that place falls apart, it's going to be kind of hard to justify sending every freaking dime you got to Ukraine, or you will be, there'll be an uprising. So I don't see how the Europeans can and they don't have the stuff. They can't afford it. Their people are pissed off. So the Europeans will not be able to continue to keep the Ukraine conflict going, even though they want to. And at that point, the Ukraine project, as it were, falls apart. When the Ukraine project falls apart, number one, the Ukrainians ain't going to be pissed at the Russians. They're going to be pissed at their government. I have a friend who is Ukrainian, and he says that his thing is, look, I've come from Ukraine. I know that place. I grew up there. He was born when it was still under the Soviet Union. I mean, he was born, I think, in the 70s, early 80s. But the bottom line is this. He said, there's going to be a civil war. I'm telling you right now. When it's over. So they'll be fighting amongst each other. Europe won't be there, but likelihood we're going to see probably massive millions of people leaving, heading. I mean, the country will be a blob of nothing in poverty. So what are they going to do? They're going to run across the borders into Western Europe and Poland and everywhere else and say, help, help, help. And of course, some of those people will be sporting an ideology that was quite popular by centered around a mustachio gentleman in the 1930s and early 40s. So that will be very destabilizing for Europe. But my point being, and this is important, doesn't that end the neo-containment strategy? If your plan is world domination, and of course you have to first dominate Russia and then China, because people are like, oh, they'll go after China. Well, you've strengthened Russia massively, massively strengthened Russia. Russia is far more military and economically powerful than it was, and far more closely allied with China. And you know what? China has, people, the neocons are like Russia. China is helping Russia, providing them with military stuff. No, Russia's a military power. Do not be misled. So China hasn't. But what China has been doing is buying everything they can from Russia. And Russia has the stuff to sell them. So it's not a fraud. China has been buying everything that Russia's selling. So China has provided an economic backdrop. But what China has is money. They provided the economic backdrop. Had they assisted Russia massively? Absolutely. With weaponry? Nah. With cash, with loot, with money. Cheese, brother, cheese. They provided that cheddar for Russia and kept Russia militarily stable. And Russia was also able to utilize this time to create new markets, to find new markets. They got stuff for sale, and to build their international sales, their international market, so much so that they could live without selling stuff to the West that much. So now what happens? Let's just say, for the sake of argument, the Trump administration comes in and says, look, we're done with this, and that ends. Then the whole thing, here's the thing, it's just like Israel. If they lose one, the containment strategy is gone. They lose it all. They lose one, they lose it all. Because one of the things that happens is this. The whole world's going to look at him and say, dude, you lost. Dude, you stepped up to Putin and he kicked your ass and sent you home looking stupid. You know what I mean? The U.S. is the bully. Look, what we're looking at here is this: the rules-based international order being challenged. The rules-based international order is simple. We can do anything we want and nobody can say a word about it. The U.S. can do, and this is it simple. The U.S. can do anything it wants, anywhere it wants, anytime it wants, and no one has a right to say anything about it. That's the rules-based international order. We will utilize the UN, international bodies, international law in a way that benefits us and our allies, our adversaries. Who cares? Right? So that's the rules-based international order. And if you remember, before the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine, the Russians sent a list of demands. They said, look, we don't want a war in Ukraine. Here's a list of demands. We need to talk about those things. And what did the US say? Nah, that's not even a starting point. What did the NATO say? The Russians don't get, Stoltenberg literally said the Russians don't get a vote. They don't get a say in this. In other words, the rules-based international order, who the hell do you think you are, Russia? We're going to come up to your border. We're going to build bases. We're going to put missiles in there, and you got nothing to say about it. Shut up. That's the rules-based international order. And Russia said, well, tell you what, you can in fact maintain the rules-based international order, and you can maintain whatever you want to do in Ukraine, but you're going to have to fight to do it. Simple as that. If you can fight to do it, you can fight to do it. You know, somebody can say to me, Garland, what's that behind you? And I can say, that's my DJI drone. And they can say, I'm taking your drone. And I can say, yeah, you can get it. You can have it. Yeah, but you got to go through me to get it. If you can kick my ass, you get the drone. If not, you get an ass whipping. But it's your figure, your decision. Let's dance, right? That's what Russia said. It's the oldest thing in the world. I'm going to take what you got. I'm going to do whatever I want. And you have no say in it. And Russia says, well, we'll find that out. Let's go. And the world's going to look at it and say, what happened there? Stepped up to Putin and you got sent home with a foot up your ass. And they will be right. And right now, there's no way around that. No matter what, there's no way around it. When you come to the border of a superpower, you're going to lose that fight. If Russia and China came to Mexico to fight the U.S., they'd lose it. The supply lines are too far. Things are too far away. You got to come all the way to here, bring all this stuff and fight us. And we're more powerful than Mexico. You're going to lose that one. The U.S. is going to Taiwan. The U.S. is going to Ukraine, to the border of the two other great world powers. And we're going to fight you on your border. You ain't winning that one. There is no way to win that one. Now, the U.S. has gone to the Middle East to fight a civilizational war. The whole entire Muslim community, the Muslim civilization, has said, we ain't down with this. So if the U.S. loses, first of all, if the U.S. loses in the Middle East, what happens? That means we no longer control, from our perspective, the oil-rich region of the world. because it's all one. This is one thing. So if you lose that and you no longer control the oil-rich region of the world, you can't choke anybody out. And basically, we kind of get ejected from the region. People say you got to go. We got bases that are naked and afraid, sitting there just waiting for drones and missiles. If we get in a fight with Iran, man, we're going to get it. If the U.S. gets in a fight with Iran, it will get ejected from the region. It will get ejected from the region because our bases are naked. That we can't control. What are we going to do? If the U.S. gets in a fight with Iran and uses nuclear weapons, likely Iran either has nuclear weapons or will quickly develop them because they have the capacity. And what happens if a nuclear war starts? Our economy's over. And guess what? We don't control the world anymore because we've wiped out the world economy, including ours, and the U.S. would fall into chaos. As the United States people freaked out and said, what the hell happened? When they woke up and they could now finally connect their foreign policy with their standard of living. And they said, because our government's foreign policy, our standard of living has increased to zero and we're eating each other. This ain't going to work. And that would be the fall of U.S. imperialism. So the bottom line is there are options in the Middle East are few and far between. And if they try to hold on to power that they've already lost, then they collapse their economy. And what do? If they try to win the war in Ukraine, then they end up in a nuclear confrontation and there's no more U.S. Right? Any way you look at it, there's no win. So it's all one because the results are the same. The dynamics are the same. The outcome is the same either way. And either one they lose. And from the perspective of my perspective, I think they're guaranteed to lose both. Either one they lose ends the U.S.'s worldwide containment strategy. And might I add, ends the rules-based international order, which is simply the U.S. can do anything it wants anywhere on earth and nobody has to say in it. And it also ends something else. It ends particularly in the Middle East, it ends this concept that the U.S. can project its power using aircraft carriers and bases all over the place. Because those aircraft carriers and bases are no longer power projection. They're sitting freaking ducks. With the missile and drone technology now, the aircraft carriers are sitting ducks. What happens if an aircraft carrier group, which has all these $2 million missiles to defend itself, and whoever your enemy is says, I'm going to go after U.S. aircraft carrier, after U.S. aircraft carrier. Okay, so you got a battle group there to protect it, right? And what happens? 500 to 1,000 drones come in, all teed up on that aircraft carrier. Now, at the same time, 10 or 15 hypersonic missiles, well, 5 hypersonic missiles, because the U.S. can't even defend against one. We have no way to defend against a hypersonic missile, but let's say one. But let's say a salvo of missiles, even if they aren't hypersonic. Let's just say conventional warheads that are not hypersonic. They're subsonic, right? Okay. Or hypersonic because the powers that be have them. So the U.S. now, you've got a carrier sitting there, and it's got 500 drones coming in, which between itself and all of its other surrounding defenders can't stop 500 drones. But if you don't stop them, the drones are going to hit that thing damn near hard enough. Once it gets hit by 150 drones carrying high-powered warheads, that's going to do so much damage it may sink it. Certainly put it out of commission in a lot of the other ships. And in comes a couple of missiles or a salvo of missiles. That thing's gone down. You cannot protect a carrier battle group anymore. Sitting ducks. You cannot protect the base. You're not going to protect the base. They can't protect their bases now. They're getting hit by drones. They'll fire 2 or 3 drones and one of them will get in. What happens if that turns into 200 or 300 drones? You ain't got a base anymore. So one of the things that's happening is the U.S. is not recognizing that its ability to project power militarily and economically has gone and is dying even more so. And they've got 2 wars and they can't win either of them, but they can't lose them. But they can't win. But so they're guaranteed to lose. What happens if Harris wins, which I don't think will happen, but if it does, well, all they could do is double down on what they're doing. But here's the problem. We're heading for a recession. And let me add this, and this is important. Think about this. The U.S. is in a very, very, very expensive military conflict worldwide, right? How expensive is it? 17 bases in Finland alone, building bases all over the Pacific, right? Defending all this. We're at war in the Middle East, and that's very expensive. We're at war in Ukraine. That's very expensive, right? All these things are expensive. At the same time, because of the disruption to our economy, because of cultural disruptions, because of people being unhappy with the decreased standard of living, at the same time, um, our military is shrinking. People don't want to join the military. Why? Because people don't want to be involved in a war. They join the military to see the world. They join the military so they can get healthcare coverage. It's a true story, and so they can get education. They didn't join the military. They don't want to go fight. They're willing to protect the country if somebody attacks them, but they don't want to go protect Zionism and a bunch of people in Ukraine who are, goose stepping around with a dog-eared copy of Mein Kampf in their back pocket. They ain't down with that. So what's happening? We're building bases. At some point, the question is going to have to be who we're putting on them. Now, I would argue one of the things that you're likely to see is, and it's already starting to see it, likely to see is a move to say undocumented immigrants, they can go to the military for 5 years, and when they come out, they'll be documented, right? To things like that. I mean, to take the desperate people and put them in the military. And that way they can also use them at home. I mean, let's face it, if you tell a bunch of people in the military, you got to go tamp down a uprising in Peoria, they're going to say, no, I'm from Peoria. But if they're not from Peoria and they're a bunch of undocumented immigrants and you say, they don't even know what the hell Peoria is, hey, we're going to do that. And if you don't, you go back to El Salvador. Well, they're going to do what they're told. They don't have the connection with the people here at home. So they can certainly pack the military with undocumented people. That way they can, mistreat them and force them to go wherever they want, do whatever they want. They can lie to them. And if they need to use them at home to tamp down uprisings, they don't have the cultural and family and economic connections to the people at home. So it's a whole lot easier to use an army full of undocumented immigrants. And then who would be victimized themselves, but it's a lot easier to use that army against the American people than it would be an army full of Americans. So that's something that would not shock me at all. And bottom line is this: the other thing we're looking at in Israel is the reality that the foundational argument behind Zionism that Jews can't be safe anywhere in the world and they all have to go to Israel to be safe. How's that going? Right? Not so good. So you're going to get a lot of Jewish people who, even ones that are Zionists, are simply going to say, man, it ain't safe here. I'm going back to friggin' Brooklyn, Paris, Moscow, wherever the hell they're from. Right? They're out of there. Right? And probably won't come back unless the country is stabilized. And it ain't going to be stabilized. It's because there's a dynamic that makes it worse, and that is, as those people leave, what you're going to have left is like the settlers. So the voter public and the people left in Israel to run Israel will be the most extremist, the most unreasonable, angriest, violent extremists. So what you'll have is Israel spin in a downward spiral as it loses, as it comes unraveled, as the economy falls. And as they lose wars, the people in charge will be the craziest and the most unstable people, and it will just get decreasingly destabilized. And you'll have, meanwhile, kind of Ukraine, the only people to be left are like the Azov battalions, or like, we're standing here with Ukraine to fight the orcs or something like that. And I guarantee you this: the time's going to come when Ukraine, there will be massive refugees, numbers of refugees heading out into the West. Massive numbers of refugees heading out into the West at a time when the economy gets more and more difficult. And so one of the things you're going to see, in the same way that you're seeing the UK people who are suffering, and who now they say, oh, we're mad at the immigrants, let's go beat up some immigrants from Africa or wherever the hell, right? Guess what? That time's coming for Ukrainian immigrants too. The time is going to come when, in various places in Europe, the people are going to get mad and they're going to say, well, you know what? We can't eat, we can't survive, we can't do anything. Oh, look at these Ukrainian immigrants. It's all their fault. Again, they're not going to blame the people that started the war. They're not going to blame the people that use Ukraine as a cat's paw to go after Russia and to destabilize and subjugate Europe. They're going to just simply say it's the Ukrainians' fault. Let's get them, boys. And things won't work out well for the Ukrainian refugees. There will be violence against them. But bottom line, you see what I'm getting at. Is it one war or two, Israel and Ukraine? No, it's part of a worldwide containment strategy that has some real problems. And might I add this, the fact that Trump and J.D. Vance are doing well, I think a big part of it has to do with people. Well, number one, economics. People ain't happy. I'm just surprised. As I said, it surprises me how many people in the black community I see that say they're going to vote for Trump, or here that are like kind of wink, wink, and no, I'm not going to vote for Trump. You know what I mean? Where you're like, that guy's going to vote for Trump, right? Or saying things like, yeah, when Trump was in, things weren't quite as expensive. And I'm like, I think this guy's implying that he's considered to vote for Trump, but he don't want to come out and say it, right? So it's interesting how many times I see that kind of stuff. Look, you can talk all this crap about the first female, black, this, that, or that. When it comes down to it, man, people vote their pocketbooks. If things ain't going well for them, they don't give a damn. They're not trying to elect a saint. They're not trying to elect the next pope. Oh, Trump does this or that with women. Yeah, people don't really care about that crap. They're trying to eat, bro. They're just trying to eat. They got kids. They got mouths. They got to feed. And if they think falsely, you can argue it's true or not true. If they think that a Trump presidency is going to bring down the price of chicken wings, guess what people are going to do? They're probably going to vote for a presidency to bring down the price of chicken wings, whether it does or not. Well, okay. So I ain't saying that, someone says Trump also makes me extremely angry. Well, here's my problem if you say that, because now you're talking about your feelings. You're talking about your emotions, and you're going to lose. When the people in power can get you angry, afraid, anxious, they can get you to do what the hell they want. Be practical. Figure these things out practically. Don't be Trump doesn't make me angry. Trump didn't come into US politics and fall out of some alternate dimension. He came out of US politics. He was created. US politics, the Democrats created a dynamic themselves where Donald Trump would appear to be a better option than them to a lot of people. So don't blame Trump for that. Don't get mad at Trump. Trump just is what he is. As we're for Biden. So the idea of getting angry or you're going to get screwed. That's what they do. Look, what do you think they did in Ukraine? They went there. They nurtured these far-right fascists. They nurtured them for decades and decades till they could get them to the point where they said, you really hate the Russians, don't you? They're like, yeah, we hate these orcs. And they're like, and I'm saying Russia may be 27 times bigger than your country and probably 5, 6 times, 7 times the population, but we think you can take them because you really hate them. And they're like, 26 times. Yeah, we hate the Russians. We can take, in order to get people so stupid that Ukraine would think they could do what Napoleon and Hitler couldn't do, they had to get them amped up and angry and then weaponize that anger against them. Can you imagine? Garland, you really hate that elephant, don't you? Yeah. You ought to go over and punch that elephant. I think you can kick his ass. Yeah, I'm going over there. Squanch. Oh, gee, poor Garland. He got flattened by an elephant. Imagine that. Right? In order to get somebody to do something so stupid, you got to get them anxious, afraid, or pissed. So be wary of saying, Trump makes me angry or Trump makes me happy. The Democrats make me angry. The Democrats make me happy. Be practical. Think this damn thing out. WIIFM, what's in it for me? That's how you do. That's how I do politics. No permanent friends, no permanent enemies, just permanent interests. If you want a friend, get a dog. Politicians ain't your friend. They don't love you and you don't love them. They're trying to eat and so are you. Think about that. All right. So that's it, you gang. Have a good time. Yeah, Trump boasted about the vax, this and that. Look, all kind of things happen. Good, bad, or indifferent. Right? Politicians have done things you don't like. They've done, but Trump, the things you did. I'm not saying to vote for Trump. I'm not saying vote for Harris. Me, probably Jill Stein for me, and she's done some stuff that I don't like. Who knows? I might go back again and write in the ghost of Hugo Chavez or Abraham Lincoln. Somebody just to piss them off. Fidel Castro. There you go. Write that in. That'll piss them off, right? That's enough for the FBI to raid my house. Who are you voting for? Fidel Castro. Hello? Yes, Mr. Nixon, it's the FBI. Come out with your hands up. Yeah, I understand you voted for Fidel Castro. Yeah, but he's dead. Yeah, good enough. You come with us. Right? Yeah, whatever the hell, right? Who cares? Maybe just vote to piss them off. Or if you want to vote for Trump, if you want to vote for Harris, if you want to vote for anybody you want to vote for, but be practical about voting. Don't vote because you hate somebody, because this person is mad. Vote because this person said this about that 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and you get into the minutia. There is nobody that you can't come. There's not a candidate that you can't come up with a reason not to vote for. There's not a candidate that you can't come up with a reason to vote for. When it comes in the end, some people just say, I'm sick of the system. I ain't voting for these people. Great. Fine for you. If you've come to the conclusion that, hey, look, you know what we need instead of capitalism is socialism. So I'm voting for the American Communist Party, or nobody at all. I'm running myself, whatever the hell. I don't care. Do something. Even if, what the old saying, do something, even if it's wrong, make a decision. As we say in Zen, don't stop and think. Act decisively without hesitation, right? Just do something. Someone says, I will not vote for genocide. There you go. Great show as always. Thank you so much. I'm out here, gang. Do me one favor. Share this on all your social media platforms. Particularly, as you know, I'm not on some of them. So follow me everywhere, including Telegram. If you can afford it, whether it's Patreon, PayPal, buy me a coffee, one of those things. If you can help the channel, I certainly appreciate it. Rockfin, Rumble, follow me over there. Don't forget, Rockfin doesn't have any advertisements. And so the way they stay on the air is they allow you to be a subscriber. You don't have to be a subscriber, but you can, if you want to be a subscriber to Rockfin. It's $14.99 a month. If somebody can afford that, fine. If you can't, don't worry about it. If you can't afford any of this, that's fine. But no matter what, do one thing. Share this on all your social media platforms. Peace. I'm out.